So, hello everyone. My name is Tomasz Bąk. I will talk today about migration from Angular to React, but it will be more generic, how to migrate a project and in a good way for the business. So first, a little bit about me. For the past 13 years, I've been a software developer at Cilio. For past over 6 years, I'm like senior front-end developer. I work with a lot of frameworks. I started with Ember. Then I worked with Angular, both 1 and 2 and up, and React. This is quite a unique situation. I worked with at least 2 years with each of those frameworks, so I'm quite a multi-framework guy. So on the agenda, first we will start with why we actually migrate the frameworks, right? Because every framework is quite good. So why we migrate? And what are the good reasons for migrate and what are not so good? Then we discuss some migration strategies, how we can approach this type of projects. And in particular, I will focus on micro frontends architecture and the benefits from it. So let's go. But before we go into the migration, we have to consider the business value and cost. So the old code, has been used, has been tested, and probably a lot of bugs has been found and fixed, and it can take quite a lot of time. So there is a certain knowledge that we will lose about all those edge cases that we have fixed in the code. So before we migrate, we should carefully look wherever the knowledge that is within the project, is it like very valuable, or is it like really that there's a technical problem and the migration actually makes sense. Also, this is a live code, so it already works. Someone is using it, and rewrite is not bringing direct value. This was this guy, Polski, who wrote this. He's actually a very experienced software developer. He worked on the team that built Excel back in the 90s. Then he established a company that built, for example, Trello and Stack Overflow. So I trust that he has some experience with working with big teams, and he knows that the rewrite is not always the best way. He also describes that it's very typical that people say, developers say that this code is a mess. But this doesn't mean that it's not a reason for migration. If the code is ugly, like it has cryptic variable names, or it has like mixed cases, styles, or anything, you can just fix it and just replacing the code or changing. If there's are problems with architecture, this also can be solved one at a time. So you can carefully move code, refactor, change interfaces. This is not a reason for migration. Also performance. Performance usually goes down to really small things. And if you can like isolate this thing that causes the problem, you can usually fix it. So watch out. Those are not the reasons to migrate. So why do we migrate, and what are the good reasons for migration? So for me, the most important one is hiring and talent retention. So if you cannot find developers anymore for Angular.js, so it's probably time to move on and change the framework. And also, if the team that you already have is not motivated to work with this technology that you have already, and want to try out something else, it's probably more valuable to keep their business knowledge than like losing them because you didn't allow them to progress. Another thing is the tech stack unification. If you allow some experiments within technology, you might find out that some things work better for your team. And then you have some solutions in one technology and some in other. In this case, at some point, you'll have to probably unify it. That's why you might have to migrate some parts of your system. Another one is that you want to leverage other technology ecosystems. And this is also connected with the previous ones. So now let's look at React in particular. So Angular is like great framework, and React is great framework. But what are for me, the advantages of React? So first of all, React has the JavaScript superpowers. It gives you those superpowers. And what are they? So first of all, the JSX, so how you write the templates in React, it blends together with JavaScript very nicely. And this is really something unique and the key point of React. Another thing is that every component is a function. So it's really, at some point, it's really easy and natural to think about the interfaces. So the inputs flow through it, and there's some changes in the UI. You can compose everything, and it's really easy to reason about it. And of course, to write a function, this is the smallest block that is in JavaScript. So it's really natural to break things down and reuse it. Another thing is that the static type checking actually is even more powerful in React than in Angular, because it also covers the template better. Another thing is that React has stronger libraries community. I have a library written in Angular, which is quite popular, and I have to say that I looked at a lot of libraries written in Angular, and I'm pretty sure that React libraries are overall better maintained. This is because of mainly because there's more people using it, so more people are interested, but also it is easier to build those libraries, change them, and also easier to maintain. Some of the most popular libraries that are in the community are Redux, Jest, and Zim, Forming, and Yap. And the funny thing is that a lot of things written within the React ecosystem, those things are usually very generic. So Redux can be used with other technologies, including Angular. Jest is a generic test runner. And Yap is also just a client version of Joy, which is extremely popular in Node.js for validations. So we can see that this connection between React and JavaScript, it really works for the community. Another thing is that the tooling and developer tools that you can use are really nice. So they are way better than in Angular. And finally, this is not unique, but it's quite strict in React. So the unidirectional data flow. So together with the simplicity of JavaScript, of functions, and the data flow, it really makes sense for developers to use it, because it's like all fits really well together. Now, so we are convinced that React is a good way to migrate. We know now how do we go with it. So first, we have to realize that migration process, at the beginning, anything that we try to build from scratch, it's gonna be much smaller than the existing application, and it's really hard to justify to change from one framework to another if the value that the business is getting is so small. So really, business will not buy this picture, no way, because there's a long time. And they only want to pay for increasing this application and not for changing the color of it or framework. So what we can do, instead of migrating by rewriting, we can add stuff, and we can continue to add and also rewrite. And then as we go, we can cover more and more. And at some point, we can decide how much we can add new features using new technology, and how much we can rewrite in each sprint. So it's much more flexible, and the business can handle it much better. Okay, so let's look closer at the migration strategies. First is the bottom-up. So we start with the lowest components, the leaves, and let's say dump components, and we change them. This is very common and works great for smaller applications. There's another approach, top-down, where we actually change bigger chunks of the application. And this is what we are going to focus on, because this is talk more about migrating bigger applications. Still, this can be mixed. So you can, of course, use parts of the bottom-up approach, like render React components within Angular application. But as you will see later, there are some pretty nice tools and strategies that might be actually better. So first, let's compare the strategies and what they give us and what are their characteristics. First of all, when we embed the React components in Angular, that's more like a bottom-up approach. And when we do this and we start with the smallest components, it usually delays the state management layer changes. And this means that we can start working on small pieces, but at some point we hit a moment when we actually need to migrate the state, and that's a huge thing. On the top down, we actually replace like larger chunks, and usually based on URLs, so as sections of the page. But the downside is that we have two separate state management layers, so we have to watch out how we do it. It's not so easy to navigate it. So let's look closer how we can handle this top-down approach. Martin Fowler has a really nice Strangler application pattern. This pattern consists of 3 steps. First, you transform, you build a parallel, let's say, new view. Then you let it coexist for some time with the existing functionality until it gets fully functional, and you no longer need the old version, and then you just replace it. And the name of the pattern comes from a special tree, which actually grows on its host, and at some time it kills it, just like this pattern. And because those are trees, it's really long process, and the Strangler pattern is really this exciting, like biology thing that we can apply something from real nature to our application development, and it's maybe looking a little bit scary, but actually the migration of large applications can be long and scary. So how do we apply the Strangler pattern? So first of all, we have to identify the bundled context in our application. So let's say that we are building an airplane application. So we have some bookings, and bookings can be one bundled context. Another one can be like a loyalty program for people. And those are 2 separate things that we can attack separately. Once we choose one of those, maybe the smallest one, we can refactor it and progress next. Each time we refactor something, it is likely that we will deliver more UI components, we will learn more, and we will get more skill in the migration, so it will get easier. Another thing that can help us, it's also close to this, is micro frontend architectures. And this is a very exciting topic because this is relevant not only for migration, but actually to architecting the whole projects, bigger projects. So the idea behind micro frontends is similar to the microservices on the backend. So, but it extends itself so that the team is cross-functional across database, backend, and frontend. It's a feature team. So this team can work on the backend and on the frontend. Of course, we can also apply it just on the frontend or just on the backend. but this is really something very well received in the industry. And as you will see later, there are some really big companies that use this approach. But how does it work? So this is an example web application. As you can see, it has a lot of interaction. So you can preview the product, you can buy it, and you can see related products. A typical web application with some interdependencies. But what you don't see is actually those are 3 separate front ends by 3 different teams and 3 different technologies. So the container is the product team, Angular. The checkout is React team, and the related products is actually Team Inspire in Vue. So for a small application, maybe an overkill, but this is just a demo. On bigger projects, it gets even more sense. So I have here 2 examples, actually from business to customer companies. But let's take a look what they say. So at first it was a bit slow, but as they learned how to do it, actually they were able to go faster. Why? Because each team was not stopping each other. Imagine that you have a huge backend and 3 teams on front end are asking those backend guys to provide them something, data from the database. If they have these backend developers on their team and and on top of that, they don't have to wait for some other team that their feature is tested and production ready. If they are very independent in deployment, they can really run much faster. So instead of being like a huge monolith project, they became a lot of small projects that can be deployed really fast. And that is the great value. And it has a use case for our migration project because it is similar. We can have a team that works on the old feature and we can have a team that works on the new feature on different technology. Similar case is from IKEA. They also applied it, and this allowed their teams to be very autonomous and deliver the features constantly. So the agile development methodology was possible only after splitting the whole project into smaller pieces. And we usually will think about it in terms of the backends, but actually it goes to the frontends as well. Okay, but this can be hard to apply in our project, right? Not necessary. There is a really nice single SPA framework. It actually has all you need to build those applications. And this is not that hard. But before we go into implementation details, let's look how it works. So there's, of course, a container application, a React in this case. And then we have 2 Angular applications that are under it. And now the router is working. So as we click, if we paste the URL, exactly the view that we would like to see is shown. When we navigate between pages and go back, the JavaScript is cached, so it's pretty quick to start as well. How does it work? First, you have to define the main application, the container. The container consists of a navbar, which you can see that is automatically loaded always. And then, depending on the URL prefix, it is loading different files from your applications asynchronously. And this allows you to, it's not necessary that those modules will be like different technologies. You can have like 2 React modules just to split it, let's say, back office part and, web shop part, or between departments or between some parts of the system across the domains. And really, that's it. That's all. That's the configuration of this single SPA application. Now, you may wonder what's inside this app.js files. That's not complicated either. Each technology has its own adapter. In this case, here you can see the React adapter. And this adapter mainly takes care of getting the mount point for the application. And it handles the bootstrapping, mounting, and unmounting. Each time you change the URL, it actually has to mount and unmount. So there's a chance to call a function on this. And on top of that, you can actually have an object and that will be shared between all those applications. So we can also pass it here. So it wasn't that hard to do it. Let's make a summary. Before you do any migration, first consider the business value and costs. Maybe you don't need to change the technology. Maybe it's just a case of refactoring it. And maybe actually you can learn something and identify a bundled context, just like in this migration example. And maybe you can make this project more robust for the future. You make your application more modular and break the monolith. So I hope you enjoyed it. And maybe it will help you in migration and making your app better. If you have any questions, you can mail me or ask me now. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.